just entered the theater of an alien sky. If the words and images seem strange to you, there's a reason for this. Our world was once a vastly different place. To experience this won't hurt you, and there is nothing to fear. In our previous discourse, we introduced the story of the Labyrinth, a story with many links to the wide-ranging archetypes we've previously explored: Mother Goddess, Warrior Hero, and Chaos Monster, all with a displaced sovereign power looming as a shadow in the background. A fascinating counterpart to the Labyrinth is the fabled Gordion Knot. That tradition was localized in the ancient Phrygian capital of Gordium in modern-day Turkey. There it was said that a far-famed knot had once yoked a notorious wagon, owned by Gordius, the mythic father of King Midas. As the story goes, the complex knot was impossible to untie. But in 333 BC, when the warrior King Alexander the Great led his army into Gordium, he encountered the yoked wagon, said to be held in place, quoting here, by several knots all so tightly entangled that it was impossible to see how they were fastened. Hanging over this incident was an ancient oracle declaring that the man who could untie the complex knot was destined to rule all of Asia. But frustrated in his attempts, Alexander announced, "It makes no difference how they are loosed." He then stood back and sliced the knot in half with a single stroke of his sword. As an echo of this story, the phrase "cutting the Gordian knot" entered the popular lexicon as a shorthand solution to a complex problem. Historians also cite an alternative version of the story in which Alexander simply removed a linchpin to loosen the knot. Tellingly, in this interpretation, the event was said to have been accompanied by thunder and lightning. Having pleased the gods, Alexander went on to conquer Egypt and much of Asia. It should go without saying that in the absence of a concrete referent, such storytelling will appear to have no believable interpretation. But if we tentatively grant the presence of a natural provocation in the ancient sky, the story elements will be expected, even when a self-serving local variant fails to convince us. According to the Babylonians, amongst the oldest storytellers in the world, a great giant named Humbaba was the guardian of a towering edifice called the Fortress of Intestines. Well, the idea that a great fortress would be composed of intestines couldn't be more ridiculous. But only ridiculous until one grants a concrete visible form in the heavens to prompt the mythical language. In fact, more than one author has proposed the mythical fortress of Humbaba was a prototype of the Labyrinth theme. But it seems that other crucial associations are too easily overlooked. A swastika at the center of the Labyrinth, for example, occurs not just in Cretan, in Attic, and in Roman art, but even in the Americas amongst the Hopi Indians. Well, that's not a small matter. In fact, it's precisely this whirling aspect of the equal-limbed cross that substantiates the electric discharge activity from which the labyrinthine form arose. One scholar who did not overlook the connection of the swastika to the labyrinth was the distinguished authority A.B. Cook, author of the massive 3-volume scholarly work Zeus. From his extensive study of the labyrinth theme, Cook concluded, "It seems certain that both Attic and Cretan art presupposed the swastika as the earliest ascertainable form of the labyrinth." Cook's observation is critical, though he clearly did not know that the identical linkage appears even in North America. Such connections invariably bring us back to the archetypal substructure of mythological expression. Our own research suggests that the global reach of the Labyrinth theme could never be explained without simultaneously illuminating the cross or swastika placed strategically at its center in opposite regions of the world. One theme leads inexorably to another: labyrinth, intestines, goddess, warrior, and central swastika. As a matter of fact, the swastika is broadly connected to the whirling dance of the archetypal goddess and prototypical warrior hero when the world slipped into chaos. How this broader archetypal context arose historically is a mystery the experts haven't even begun to explore. It's known that one of the more common dance patterns in ancient times was not just of whirling performers, but more specifically, a dance along a path marked out by a labyrinth. That's why in classical times the word labyrinth often meant dance. A.B. Cook, for example, relates the labyrinth simultaneously to a symbolic imitation of the sun's movements and to patterns of imitative spiraling dance. If that conclusion is correct, it's no surprise that archaic labyrinthine dance patterns echoed into more modern times as the Troy dance and similar children's games. Not to be overlooked is the fact that the dance of the hero Theseus was also in conjunction with the goddess Ariadne, and that is why, as noted by Cook, the labyrinthine dance was indeed archetypal. In fact, said to be the first occasion on which men and women danced together. Here, as it is so often the case, we see the telltale signature of the celebrated first form, to which all imitative or sacred practices in the ancient world direct our attention. Over the years, in exploring ancient Egyptian symbols, we found innumerable counterparts to the global archetypes, and the dancing warrior is no exception. One of the key Egyptian images is that of the red Ob heart of Ra, called the Heart of Carnelian. Egyptian texts identify the Ob heart with such warrior heroes as Shu, or Anhur, or Horus, all identified as the planet Mars in our reconstruction. Egyptian symbolism presents this innermost, masculine heart as the Ob en Hati, the heart of the warrior within the enclosing feminine turquoise Hati heart, meaning the eye, heart, and soul of the primeval sun god Ra. In other words, there is no surprise in the hieroglyphic image showing the Ob heart as a male figure in a dancing posture virtually identical to that of the Hindu Shiva, who similarly stands in conjunction with the Hindu mother goddess. But few indeed have noticed that the swastika itself symbolized the whirling, dancing, masculine, reddish heart of the ancient sun god, whom the world's first astronomers of ancient Mesopotamia named as the planet Saturn. And until the underlying equations are recognized, such obvious clues as the swastika, the very swastika displayed as the heart of the Greek Apollo, will mean virtually nothing to us. Of course, none of the connected themes has anything to do with the movements of the sun in today's sky. In fact, the relationship of the swastika to the warrior hero will virtually always go unnoticed by the specialists. And the closer we look, the more extraordinary the confirmed traditions become.